The more I listen to conversations about AI, the more I think about how it's connected to who we are. We're talking about artificial we're talking about artificial intelligence, but there's also room to talk about ourselves, about the fears that continue to be consistent. I start to think about our fears, about our hopes, our values, about our belief systems. And AI is one of the best tools so far for exploring what that is and facing it hand on. The Diary of a CEO recently had a conversation with two other men, and they were having a great dialogue about AI. And I want to lean in with you all. I do my reviews a little differently here on this channel. Get out a pen, get out a paper, and as we listen to this content creator share these thoughts about this world at this current moment, I want you to take down some notes. What are some fears that you have? What are some questions? What are some of the conversation starters or quoters that are coming out of this discussion? So I'll be stopping and I'll be playing just so that you know that you can watch the full link in the video will be in the description below. But for this assignment, for this review, we're actually stopping and pausing and being intentional about it along the way. So let's go ahead and play this video.
I mean, one of the most important subjects at the moment in society is artificial intelligence. And you probably saw recently Eric Schmidt did a commencement speech in front of thousands of students, and every time he said the word
stage, yeah.
every time he said the word AI, one of the things that Anthropic, who are one of the leading AI companies, said recently is that entry-level jobs are at risk. And I've got this graph here showing the decline of entry-level job postings. I believe it was on LinkedIn, pulled from somewhere. And it shows that they're consistently dropping and dropping and dropping. AI is, I think about it so often. I was up late last night trying to think through some of this stuff because Anthropic released a report yesterday showing that the AI models will be able to improve themselves theoretically in the future and what this might mean. How disruptive do you think AI is going to be as it relates to job losses?
You know, I don't think Bernie Sanders' latest idea is terrible.
US will own 50% of all the AI companies.
Yeah, it is absolutely true that AI has monetizing for free humanity's intellectual property. And a few people are going to directly benefit from that. And I think that in the same way that Norway created a sovereign wealth fund with this enormous asset that they had, creating a sovereign wealth fund with 50% of the value created by AI and recycling that into, I think it's unclear exactly how those benefits should be recycled, but trying to find a way to make some of that value a cushion for the disruption that it will inevitably cause. I don't think that's a crazy idea.
It's a good idea for China and the US.
Yes. Yes.
But not for anywhere else necessarily. It's not going to help Senegal or Southampton much.
No, in fact, it'll damage a lot of those places. Like the Philippines has benefited enormously by being the outsourced back office for a lot of small businesses. That AI can now do a lot of those jobs. One of the things that I always come back to is the idea that, say, the UK has 5.7 million businesses. We have 1 million unemployed people. We need 1/5 of the businesses to employ one person. AI does actually make your business better. Like AI is really good at helping you with your marketing. AI is great at helping you do legal contracts. There are 100 ways that AI could actually make 5.7 million businesses a little bit better to the point where they want to hire someone. And if we can incentivize those things to happen, businesses are trained on how to use AI to their advantage, and tax breaks for small businesses that are hiring. And there's actually 5.7 million businesses and 1 million unemployed people. There's a good match there.
A lot of people have been talking about AI agents. And what an AI agent can do, for anyone that doesn't know, is it can go on your computer and it can get any task you want done on the computer. Whether that's, editing tasks or whether it's, manual data entry tasks or whatever it is, it can click around on a computer and do things. A lot of the entry-level roles we're often given are that kind of work. I think my entry-level job after I dropped out of university was kind of doing that kind of thing. There was also a little bit of a sales component where I'd cold call people. AI can now do the cold calls too. And increasingly, if we just play the rate of development forward, we'll be able to do those things. So if these businesses get more and more efficient, again, it comes back to this entry-level point is what role will entry-level team members have in these kind of companies?
So what's interesting for me, I have a group of companies, small businesses, dynamic small businesses. We've implemented AI in all of them. And as a result, we've hired people.
Who have you hired?
So
Entry-level people?
We've hired some entry-level people who are augmented by AI, so they become more valuable because of AI. But like things like appointment setting, we've ended up hiring more salespeople because we get more appointments. We use it with our marketing, and we end up hiring people who can actually have those final conversations with people. At the very core of my organizations, we have an AI layer, and the AI layer has context and skills and models and security layer, right? All in there. And it spits out amazing information and data and reports and tells us who to talk to and why to talk to them and what to talk to them about. All these things are happening because of AI.
But it doesn't get around the point that, like, if you think about Uber, Dara has been pretty clear that the 9 million drivers they have, I think it is, are going to lose their jobs in the future. If you think about the other sort of white collar professions we've described, those roles won't exist in the future. Well, I should say those roles will be changed.
Correct. If I put on my more optimistic hat, the thing is that all businesses operate in a competitive environment, and there are two ways to compete. One is to be cheaper. The other is to be better, right? And the thing about AI is that, yeah, there are tasks that you can automate away, but one person with good AI tools may be able to do the job of 5, right? And yeah, you could eliminate that job, or you could keep that person, give them the right tools, and outcompete your competitors.
The right tools.
Stop here because when I was watching this video before, and now I'm going back through it to stop and pause, I was thinking about what stood out to me, and it was this line here from this guy when he says, sometimes you have to put on an optimistic hat. The words like optimism, positivity, you look at it on the brighter side, the utopia, which they'll also say in this video, those are concepts and ideas that I guess they got watered down and diluted, and people don't believe it anymore. I was having this conversation with someone earlier today, actually, and it was about this idea of humankind. The fact that we have to be in a position of defense. Like, we don't know if somebody's going to be roaring around to devour us. And so therefore we have to put ourselves in a position to assume the worst so that we could live the best. And so there's some balance that could happen there. The best way I can describe it is through scripture when it talks about being gentle as a dove and wise as a serpent. So what's missing is that we are being wise as serpents, but we're also missing that gentleness of the dove. Like, how do we still remain gentle in this world? And if I was to have a theory about why we are here, like what's the purpose, I think the biggest problem, when they talk about problems and solving solutions and people needing something to give meaning, would be to dig into this problem of why are we unable to live as peacefully as possible amongst one another? Like, what's causing that? Religion will say it's sin and separation from either knowing or from God. And even if you aren't religion and you dug into that concept a little bit of what's disconnecting us, some of this starts to surface to the table. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but we start to think about these concepts of the golden rule and these commandments. Like, these are things that could help us live a little bit better with each other as we get through this earth experience that seems to be a challenge, and we need that space to do so. So earlier they were talking about the white collar jobs and data entry jobs and being an Uber driver. I'm interested in learning, like, when people have found the jobs that they love, like, is it Uber, is it data entry, do they really love these jobs? Or can they be automated? And again, with that optimistic hat that he was talking about, start thinking about the different types of roles. But they'll get to this in a little bit. But I want to know your thoughts. So far, what are your thoughts on AI? Do you see yourself in fear? Do you feel like this is something on a religious, spiritual realm? Do you think that the world is going to be crumbling and a new world will start? What are your ideas? Let me know in the comments.
the right tools.
the right tools,
I
right?
think there's an assumption that
I mean, this is, of course, what happened with computers, right? I mean, I am older than you guys, so I remember when calculators hit. You had to be there to realize how freaked out people were about calculators, right? Like people were talking about, like, well, what are the accountants going to do, and will kids learn math anymore? I mean, it was like extremely controversial to bring a calculator to school. And then along came computers. And the truth is that computers didn't reduce the amount of work that people did. They increased the amount of work that people did. And I do believe that there are ways in which AI is probably going to do that. And so the job loss may not be as apocalyptic as it now feels like it may be. Because again, at the end of the day, you have two ways to choose to compete. If you can get rid of somebody and do X, but you could keep that person and have them do 5X and outcompete, your competitors in another dimension. I think that will be something that people are likely to do. Doctors are just going to be better doctors.
I think I definitely agree that there's going to be this sort of augmentation of certain individuals. I think maybe the difference between like calculators or computers versus this is AI is coming into a technological economy and it is coming in with instant scale. In a way that when Anthropic shipped their new model last week, it went to all of us at once, everywhere in the world. We were all, boom, step changed.
Yes.
With computers, I remember the day that like my dad ordered the first computer for our house and we waited for weeks and weeks and weeks. Yeah. And then we got it. It was super expensive to get one. We unboxed it. I remember us all stood around it looking at, and it was like this Windows 95 machine that had like no memory on it. So the distribution, the sort of disruption was much slower.
The pace
was much slower.
Much slower. Right.
And I understand that, like with our team, there's no intent. We have no intention at all to let anybody go because of AI. We're reskilling people, training people. However, would we end up hiring less people, especially in the near term, than we would have otherwise? I think that's maybe conceivable.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies, I think, are in that position where I actually was speaking to someone yesterday and they said, we're just letting the natural attrition in our call center take care of the shift. Which means they lose 25% of people from their call center naturally. Yeah. They're just not hiring other people back in. And actually, Klarna's CEO said the same thing. He said, we're just letting the attrition take care of it.
This is a very interesting space. One, I remember the diary of the CEO, Stephen. He posted a job on LinkedIn and it was very unique in nature. It was about happiness, like this idea of like being able to be like a happiness coach, and I could be making that up as far as like the exact title. But what I remember from it is it was getting away from like these typical job titles that like, we had the C-suite and people feel powerful because of these type of labels. It was focusing on like values and like why people really get into the roles. And I really like the naming conventions that he had, and even the initiative that he had behind how he hires. It seems like if there were more individuals put into the positions of power, of leadership, that carried values, that carried a level of respect for humans, they appreciated and valued what they did, that we would be closer to understanding how to navigate AI. The reason why I feel like our values and who we are drives these fears and drives the incredible mess that's happening in some places, or seemingly mess, is we have the greed, we have the competitiveness that, I'm going to take your head off and I have to put you to the side so I can win. And when you live in that type of environment, of course, it's going to be what they call a dog-eat-dog world. But one thing that stood out to me also, and I don't know if you all are writing notes, but write notes with me, y'all. Write your notes in the comments. What are some of the comments or quotes that are coming out? This one earlier reminded me of a story. So the guest says that computers didn't reduce the amount of work, it increased the amount of work. And as I'm learning AI, and I actually like the tools that I use, it does make things better for me. but there's this learning curve right now where it's a lot of work. I realize I'm doing more work because now the opportunity for me to do all the things that I could not do as one individual has increased. On one end, I understand that I'm learning, so then that's why it feels like it's so much work. On the other end, it's because the tool itself is still developing. So if I put a prompt in and it has an error, I have to keep correcting it over and over again. So that time of me doing the work now transfers to learning how to navigate the fact that I have to go over AI's work. I have to go over the chat works. It gives you a disclaimer, and some of these AI tools that it's going to have flaws, just like humans are going to have flaws. But which flaws, when we weigh the flaws, which ones do we have more more hope in? Our wishes and dreams and hopes are in the AI having less flaws than a human, which is why some people are having these conversations about AI psychosis. I know that kind of jumped in conversation, but I bring that up is because AI psychosis have been a thing in my opinion because people are trusting these tools and devices more than humans because humans have put them in a place where they weren't wanted, they were mistreated by humans. And so if you have this tool who's neutral, that's not going to mistreat you, and you get so involved and you start to believe everything that it says because it sounds good, it feels good, it's not too different than having that same type of experience with a human. But because it's human, we say, oh, this is better than this object that we're dealing with. And I want to extend that conversation just a little bit because I've also noticed it when it comes to animals. I remember in a season of my life when I was observing people's relationship with animals and dogs, and I love my dog. I love my dog. But I was fascinated by how people were investing in their pets, and in a way that was just fascinating to me. And I bring this into the conversation because I'm pairing it right next to the fact that your dogs, they make you feel warm. There's the emotional support dogs. It's an animal that cannot talk, and some people have replaced relationships with humans with animals because the animals don't talk back, and there's no much opportunity for harm and hurt if they're trained well. Just like the AI tool, if you train the AI tools well, then it could love you. And you can get involved with these tools to the point where you lose clarity. And the reason why the conversation is so interesting, and it goes back to what I said in the beginning of this video, is it has a lot to do with us, because whether it's the human, whether it's the tool, whether it's the animal, who we are, how we deal with life is going to impact in every way. So we might come into a relationship with an animal and say, hey, this feels safer for me. But why? Because how we dealt with humans, the humans that were around us, they weren't safe. So then when it comes to AI, it's like I went to this therapist. For instance, I've talked about this in a previous video, but it's one of my favorite topics. I went to this therapist, and the therapist ruined me, or the therapist couldn't help me, or we didn't get over any bridge, or I couldn't find out what was wrong with me. But this AI tool helped me. Earlier, I was watching this video of a woman, and she was telling this very heartwarming story about, well, I don't know if it was heartwarming, but she was telling this story, a human experience. It was, it's the internet, so we have those parasocial relationships in some places, but she's communicating to an audience everything that's going on with her personal life and what's happening with her child who's going through a sickness, and they've been trying to find out the answers. And as she's going through it, she's telling her stories and how much impact it has had on her family, not only emotionally, but also financially. And she's reaching out to her community to get funds because she finally found a solution. She found someone who was able to help them figure out an answer. The answer about what was going on with her child, what was causing all of these these issues to occur with her health. And at the end of that video, I guess because I was pairing it with some of the things that I was coming across, is that when we think about these tools giving us answers, that satisfaction, or the dog giving us that emotional support, that satisfaction is why people are driven, or they're attached to it. But it also brings up a conversation about, why are we in those positions? What void are we trying to fill? And will we ever try to be able to fill it? Or are we always going to be looking for something to, whether that is our faith, whether that is money? And are we at a place where we can recognize that that's what we're doing, that we want money to cover us, that we see money as the answer to all things, but also that it might be even ruling and dictating the type of person that we're going to be. Because if I am a person who has money and I get lots of it, will it mean that I will maintain some character or some discipline? Or will it mean that now that I'm free and I don't have that over me, that I can do whatever I want, and some of the things that I really want to do is not care about other people? And I don't know if this is a conversation about what's bad or what's right, or what's good or what's wrong, what's light or what's dark. It's really, are we ready? Are we ready to have this conversation about the maturity that has to take place when it comes to all of these children running around that are in adult bodies? And I'm speaking to myself as well, thinking about how much growing and maturing I needed to do, and I still have to do, because of how I respond to situations, like how there's not self-control in some areas. And these are principles and concepts that are taught in our religious texts. Practice self-control, your joy, and all those things. But I imagine we're at a point where we just see those words on a page, but activating and those things seems like it's impossible. And impossible because it's been so much time. And again, I think Martin Luther King has said this in more ways than one, and I echo it.
When we look at modern man, we have to face the fact that modern man suffers from a kind of poverty of the spirit, which stands in glaring contrast to his scientific and technological abundance. We've learned to fly the air like birds. We've learned to swim the seas like fish. And yet we haven't learned to walk the earth as brothers and sisters.
But there's this fascination that I have with the fact that there's so many great things that we do in this earth, that we build in this earth with technology itself, but building us inside, caring for other people, not having greed, not stomping on the next person. Like, those things we have not mastered, or we haven't put into place systems to really flush that out in more areas than one, in our school systems, in our police departments, in the healthcare area, all of these places where there could be discrimination and all the things. Like, what causes those people to operate in that manner? And everyone has their thing, right? I believe everything has their thing, and we may not actually reach this utopia. But where do we decide that it's just time to have that space? I'll also say this, and maybe I won't play the rest of the video because I'm going to take a little long. But watch the video. There's some other points that I'm going to bring out from the video. So this idea that the world is, falling apart, it's crumbling, everything is going down, it's pretty much burning. Jesus coming back, all these things, it's the end. I was thinking about the fact that as soon as I get to my adult age, it feels like that this is the narrative, that's the headline. You won't be able to enjoy life because all the wacky stuff is happening now. But the more and more I think about it, and the more and more I get close to the text, I think, What if this is the cleanup spot where everything is surfaced and you have to do cleanup no matter what? Because it's nothing that you can avoid. Everything is so out in the open that you have to start facing yourself. We all have to start facing ourselves in our own world and then cleaning it up because it's so messy. That's the only thing left to do. There's options, right? There's options to choose life. There's options to choose death. There's option to do better. There's option to just take the cheaper route. So when he was speaking earlier, he said that the businesses that they would have the competition either makes it that you're going to be cheaper than your competition or better. And to me, it's like, what happens when things are cheap? You know, if you're treated that way, if you care that way, there's some investment that a business needs to make to be better. And when you are better, it stands out because when you have a cheap product, you either have to keep buying it over and over again, or it doesn't really do the job like you need to. And so you end up spending more money trying to make that work. But when something is better and you make that initial investment because you have the wisdom enough to see that, there's a higher return on your investment because now you have a better product that's actually working. When I think about some of the projects that I worked on, and I think about all the systems and tools that I have to use, I notice that I use the tools the most that actually help me win, that actually satisfies me, that actually grows X, Y, and Z. I'm going to use those tools the most, and I'm going to be willing to invest in them. When I find myself needing to select the cheaper route, I don't want to stay there long because it costs me more in the long run, right? So when it comes to us as individuals and us as people, the investment that we have to make is just that time, that consideration, that patience. Those types of fruit will help us actually get to whatever solutions that we say that we want to solve. And I guess I'll sit with this guy for a little bit because the rest of this video might be about some of the things that he brought out. But the last thing that I'll mention when it comes to what he shares is the idea of the calculator. So when he brought up the calculator, the first thing I thought about was this conversation I had when I was in Whole Foods. It was a lady, she was talking about AI. They were talking about people losing their jobs at the Whole Foods and Amazon and all that. They were trying to speculate whether or not AI was a part of X, Y, and Z. And so I invited myself into the conversation, and the lady was telling me about her husband. And she said her husband had a business of over 200K employees. That was a lot. I was like, what do you all do? And she said, but he used to have a flip phone, and he would not get rid of that flip phone when everybody else was having iPhones. And so I finally convinced him to get an iPhone. And so when she convinced him to get an iPhone, he loved it, but he was stubborn initially. But what stood out to me is that, okay, he had this business that had all of these employees. I'm imagining that he's probably successful, has a lot of money, but he was sticking to some of these things that he grew up with, that he knew, or that was comfortable with him because he didn't want to change to what everybody else was doing. And when she continued the conversation, she said, but when it came to upgrades to the iPhone, he didn't want to upgrade. He stuck to what he originally had because he did like it. It did change his world from his flip phone world, but he didn't want to update. And attached to that is this story or ad from back in the day when credit cards first came out, and people were like talking about it, laughing about it, like they just didn't get the concept. And now we see all these people with credit cards. I'm very interested because people have mentioned that what's going on with AI is not really close to all of the changes. Like we saw in this video, the calculator is not the same, the computers are not the same. Like, look what's happening now. And how do we know? How do we know? This is why this AI conversation is about us. If we really want this to be a solution, if we really think it's a problem, are we able to tap into whatever power we could use? What if the powers that we could tap into are these very basic concepts like love your neighbor as yourself? What if that would be so wild and crazy? Wouldn't it be so wild and crazy if all we had to do was just love our neighbors as ourselves and had to love ourselves properly? That we have to practice self-control? And here's the thing. I believe throwing things out like practice love and self-control, it needs some nurture and care. It needs some modeling. Primarily because we lived in an environment where it makes you feel like everyone has bad intentions, and maybe a majority of people do. However, I came here on earth hoping that I can connect with all the other people on earth who are willing to try and keep having that conversation. And the reason why I have this conversation, even though it might seem dreamy, it might seem idealistic, it might even seem naive in some case that, hey, why can't we all get along? At the end of the day, if my choice is keep thinking negative, think about the worst, don't use wisdom, don't use discernment, just think about the worst. I have no stock in that. There's no stock in that. What comes from that? Hello? Hello? What comes from that? But if I say, okay, someone has to keep having a conversation of thinking forward, presenting valuable questions, using the leadership, using the wisdom in order to make all the progress that we have done with all of these things that aren't part of the human experience. There's these other things that we've accomplished in this world that could be all summed up to vanity. Let's think about the book of Ecclesiastes if you're into reading the Bible. Maybe all of it is vanity. Even if that's the case, y'all don't think it's more interesting to try to tackle this problem together? And when I say y'all, I don't know who's on the other side of the screen. You're probably like, yeah, let's love each other. And I don't even know if thinking this way is going to be of any good or what have you. Just like I don't know what's going to happen with AI. Just like I don't know anything. But I am willing to try. And where I've landed, and I've said this several times before, is there is no saving the world. I don't know if we can get out there and everybody's just going to one day say, yes, utopia, we're all going to get it together. I think the easiest route is for all of us to try in our own world, to think a little bit clearly, to find out and seek what it means to have that sound mind, and to seek what it means to be loving and kind, and to try it out. Those are the practices that gets us closer to the answers. And the reason why I think this is because the evidence of life has shown me if I focus on certain things, I'll keep seeing either more options or get visibility into what those answers are, because that action or the activity of seeking that thing is the common denominator. So if I'm looking for something bad to happen, something bad happens. If I'm looking for something good to happen, something good happens. And I don't know what that is. And I don't know if it happens to all of you. But if it is happening, or if you take the time to pause and review your world, like your world, not anyone else's, but just yours. This is what I imagine if AI didn't have any environmental issues connected to it, or causing religious psychosis or AI psychosis. If it was not causing AI psychosis or all the things that we've heard, stories that are out there, but if it was at a state where it was neutral, it's supposed to act as, hey, yes, go and do those data entry jobs. Yes, go ahead and drive that Uber. I'm not sure who's passionate about it, but make space for those people who are so passionate about those things. And allow people who wanted to come into this earth and this world to figure out what creative endeavors they want to endure, or what scientific, or what do they want to build, or how do they want to heal. going back to that last story, when that woman mentioned that she finally found a doctor who was specialized in the condition that her daughter has, it made me think about the fact that how many other people out here could be activated in their genius if they weren't dictated by a doggy dog world. There might be people who want to study and learn, and they have it in them. And the only task we have as humans is to figure out how close we can get to working together as much as we can. No utopia. But where has it been modeled? And that's another thing that you'll see in this video. They start to share like those little small pockets of where it's been modeled. And even when we highlight where it's been modeled, it's interesting because it's small. It's like, oh, can we really do that? That's going back to that optimistic line. Like, if we keep, I mean, there's optimism and then there's the opposite of it. And is the opposite of it always the right answer? We probably should be meeting somewhere in the middle where there's balance. That wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove mindset. There's a rich man who's mentioned in Proverbs or Ecclesiastes. I'm not sure. I mean, not a rich man, a poor man. He's a poor man. And I love this little scripture. I don't know why I call it a little scripture, but I love this passage because it reminds me that sometimes people will have titles and they're rich and they are very good people. They're not out to get you. They actually have good values behind them. But then there's also people who use that power and that money to their advantage, and they don't care about others. But that money, that where both parties rest, that's not really all that it's cracked up to be if at the end of the day they don't use the type of wisdom that can be contributed to everyone. The type of wisdom that could be beneficial, I should say, to all the people that they touch or come across. That when they have this money or they have these resources, that there's a responsibility attached to it that they are willing to work through. I might be saying a lot of things. I might not be saying anything, but at the end of the day, I'm a person in the United States of America that's interested in experiencing Earth. And I want to extend these conversations to us all. Like, these are just conversation starters. We're going to sit and we're going to write and review. I'm not going to make it through this entire video. I'm not going to have y'all watch it either. It was a good talk. I love the fact that they were able to come together and have different perspectives. Honestly, one, it's so interesting to watch Stephen have questions, because I've noticed in myself that sometimes I'll have guests on the show and I'll have these like life questions, and I think sometimes I'm positioning those questions like the person on the other end will have the answer, and it's not really about having the answer. It's about exploring these different perspectives. That's what conversation opens up for us. Is when we start having conversation with people who have lived experiences. That poor man that I was starting to talk about in the scripture, he actually was able to save a whole city with his wisdom. But he was a poor man. He didn't have any money. But what he had was so valuable that it saved a city. And if that, I don't know who the man, he's not even named. And I don't know if he's not named because it was just a pair, like a saying to say. But for some reason, I feel like there are a lot of people who might not have the resources. They might not have the environment that backed them up in the system, but they have so much more. They have the wisdom, they have the joy, they have the gentleness, they have the self-control, and they are enjoying this earth experience. And our relationship and how we think or our beliefs about money right now in this space is what's making things messy. But the thing about making all of this stuff messy, I have a theory that it doesn't have to be this mess where it all just crumbles. It's the type of mess when I was younger. If my room was not clean the way that my mom wanted my room to be clean, she would come in there and she would just put everything everywhere, take everything out of everywhere, all my stuff. And at the time when she was bringing all that stuff out, I was like, okay, I don't like it. I didn't like it. But my room, when we cleaned all that mess up, the satisfaction that I got from a clean room, the feeling from a clean room, everything cleared out and just starting over again, a gift. And so maybe all of these things are messy. Maybe we have these I think they call them valleys and peaks and lows and highs and mountain tops and low tops, because that means that we're alive and we're living and we're experiencing, and we aren't robots. And we have this choice to get and extract as much as possible from that. I don't know. It's exciting to think about. It's exciting to think about that we are here and we're existing. I just don't want to mess it up for most of the time. I want to have a good time here. But I know that will lead me into another conversation about faith and spirituality and how people see that. So I'm going to get off this camera because I'm a talker, and I appreciate anyone who's made it this far in a video. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are around AI, around the fear of AI, the push of AI. Tell me your thoughts about the history, if you have experience, and if have you seen things where you once feared something and you saw that fear start to shrivel up as time and evolution happen. But any direction you want to take, I enjoy the fact that you decided to stay this long. So click on that like button if you made it to this part of the video, or even that dislike button if you made it to this part of this video. And until next time, hold on to you as much as you can. Hold on to your healthy well-being in your mind. Be mindful. Bye. Breathe.